Good evening.
Okay, goodness.
I'm going to call this meeting, City Council meeting to order of the January the 22nd. Welcome. Madam Clerk, would you read the roll call, please?
Mr. Braun.
Present.
Mr. Shyland.
Present.
Mr. Moore.
Present.
Ms. Reclue.
Present.
Mr. Shiverdecker.
Here.
Mr. Simmons.
Present.
Mr. Stone.
Present.
And Mr. Vaughn.
Present.
8 council members present.
Very good. Thank you. One's here. Nice, pleasant evening. If you all rise with me, Pastor Bruce Williamson is with us this evening to lead us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance, if you will.
I will do that, sir. Our Heavenly Father, I want to keep first things first tonight and remember police officers that were slain in Alabama yesterday and attacked in Saginaw, Michigan today, as well as firefighters who were hurt in a collapsing building in Dayton, Ohio. We believe at this time, according to reports, that their injuries are non-life-threatening, but nevertheless, it reminds us of the daily, hour-by-hour danger that our police officers and first responders face in keeping our community safe. And Lord, we're grateful for them and pray for those that are struggling and are injured and grieving in this hour. I pray for those that may have to respond overnight with the weather forecast, including the possibility of freezing rain by morning. Our local first responders and officers, firefighters may have that need. Lord, do protect them in the course of the night while we rest. I lift up this session tonight. I pray for our mayor and council persons, administrators, and those who lead this city's work. Nonetheless, all the way down to the boots that are on the ground every day, keeping our city both safe, protected, and moving forward as a community. I want to continue to pray for those within the city family who have ongoing health needs, that you'll continue to monitor and meet those needs. That would include, but not be limited to Mayor Benton, Chief Myers, Mr. and Mrs. Reclue, Mr. Chyland, Mr. Moore, Mrs. Kofeld, and any others that are part of the city family and network. Do bless as you will. For this session tonight and those that are here to share any discussions held or decisions made, it is always our prayer that they be your will and pleasing to you. We all pray this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Face the flag. Attention, salute, and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate you. At the beginning of each council meeting, we set a time aside for visitors who would like to address the council over a concern within the city. To do that, and we just ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes. And give us your name and your address. And of course, this is if you're already on the agenda for the evening. This is not the time for that. We'll wait till the time the agenda item comes up. So at this time, anyone who'd like to address the council, please come forward. Sure. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, Scott Peterson, 715 Hickman Avenue. I understand that we are on the agenda this evening to address the county stuff. But in times past, things have been tabled. We just want to make sure we get the opportunity to speak tonight.
I'm sorry?
We just want to make sure we get the opportunity to speak and our agenda item not be tabled.
Oh, no.
Okay.
You will be heard.
Okay, we appreciate it.
I put you on the agenda so you had a chance for interaction.
Okay. Yeah, because we were unaware that we were on the agenda until this evening, so I just wanted to make that clear.
Look forward to your comment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor Benton, Mr. Johnson, Ms. Krausen, and council members. I just wanted to take a moment to formally introduce myself as Valerie Stabarker. I am on the ballot for City Council for Ward 1. I am a former city employee. I worked for the police department for 11 years. Stopped about 5 years ago, left, moved on. Very active in the community. All 3 kids are in Fulton Public Schools. And I'm just looking forward to the opportunity to working with you. So I just wanted to introduce myself and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your
Doctor, what's your address?
I apologize. 909 Grand Street.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to address the council? Please come forward this time.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Deshaun Stallworth. I reside at 891 Penny Lane. Here to talk this evening, my 5 minutes, about, I guess, the agenda for the Fulton firefighters. I'm coming to you as a citizen, not as a firefighter. Although I did used to work for the city of Fulton as a firefighter. I joined their union. I was a proud member, but now I'm a citizen. And I would have to say, from the information that I've heard and the information that I have, I just ask that you guys really think about what you're doing and who you're hiring. I just think that why can we not go back to mediation and figure out terms without having to spend all this tax dollars on a high-powered lawyer? Why? I'm asking as a citizen, where are we getting this money from? Where are we getting this money from? Where is this money coming from that we say that we don't have? You guys say we don't have money for this and we don't have money for that, but it comes to this little union and a dispute over words, and all of a sudden we have money to hire one of the best anti-union lawyers in the state. My question as a citizen is, where did this money come from? How are we going to afford this? You know, it's I think it's very millennial of you guys to, you know what I'm saying, have a fight over words and then go out and get the best lawyer ever. Why can we not just resolve this in court-ordered mediation like it was supposed to? Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Hey, thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to address the council? Okay, seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Might also mention that I think Mike West and Lyle Cannell are with us this evening, and Steve Moore, who are all running for mayor. It's good to have you all. Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is an agenda that a method whereby the council can handle a number of city normal business issues under one vote. And those items on the consent agenda tonight are the approval of a request from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for the 2nd annual campus walk on March the 23rd. The approval of the City Council minutes of December the 18th and January 8th, and also the Director's Administration report for the month of December, and the acknowledgement of the following board and commission reports: Planning and Zoning, Historic Preservation. Looks like they had 2 meetings in November and 1 in December. Are there any items that any council member would like to remove from the consent agenda?
There's no objections to removal. I move we accept the consent agenda as is.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the consent agenda
And a second?
and a second. Is there any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Consent agenda is approved. We'll now consider the financial reports for the month of December. Mrs. Hoslag is with us, and she'll impart her wisdom. Thank you.
What there is of it. I've tried to cover everything in the notes. I'll hit a couple of the high points. We now have 11 months of sales tax recorded, and we are right in line with the prior year. Not ahead, not back. I think it's less than $1,000 difference. We did receive about $55,000 in rent on 2 city-owned property. One is for the Yato Farm out off of Business 54, that 160 acres we purchased several years ago. and the other is, portion of that is for farmland rent out at the airport. I think one, the Yato Farm brought in $22,000, and the airport brought in $34,000. So, and Fulton Commons TIF made their semi-annual debt service payment, interest payment of $198,000. And I would be glad to answer any questions.
Motion to approve the financial report.
Second.
Very good. Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the financial report. Are there any questions or any discussion of this motion?
Kathy, am I looking at it correct? The Parks and Rec is at $653,974. Is that total now? That's just the Parks and Rec side.
That is the Parks and Rec.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. If there's no further questions or comments, call for the question. All those in favor of approving the financial reports or accepting them, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Yeses have it. Financial approves. Thank you very much for your time, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
It appears as if we've been finishing up our business pretty well. We don't have any unfinished business tonight. Therefore, we'll move on to new business. The Fulton JCs are requesting to have a Easter egg hunt on April the 20th. And I think Ms. DeVille is with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, council members. We would like to use the Memorial Park, the pavilion, the gazebo, the splash pad for our 70th annual Easter egg hunt this year. We've so far in the past been able to keep it at no charge. Right now we're spending probably $300 to $400 every year on prizes and eggs and candy. Last year we stuffed a little over 2,000 eggs, and we're going to have to do more this year. It's grown so much, and the reason we like to keep it downtown is because most of the kids that come, they all walk. Otherwise we would have it at the fairgrounds with no problem. So we would just like to ask if it would be possible to have that at rent-free, because we do this free for the community.
Okay, very good. Any questions from council?
Make a motion that we waiver the fee for that.
I'm sorry, Steve, I'm not hearing you.
Motion was offered to waive the fees.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Do I have a second to that motion?
Yep.
I heard, okay. Very good. I have a motion and a second to waive the fees. Any further discussion of that motion?
I do have a question. Have we done this before? Waiving the fees?
It's all recently changed.
Parks and Rec
Well, I know it changed to not waiving.
Parks and Rec has. Right. Parks and Rec has.
But before we've waived the fees?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Parks and Rec has always waived the fees for us before.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Moore.
I admit, Mr. Chairman, that I'm the one always against doing that, but this actually benefits the entire community and a lot of little children. So I think sometimes, I know that it goes against my will, but sometimes we just have to.
The kids thoroughly enjoy it.
Thank you for doing it.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's a lot of work, but we all have a blast with it. And of course, the Easter Bunny shows up too. The kids love that.
Come talk to me, and I'll help with a donation.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor of approving this, waiving these fees, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Okay, yeses have it. So
Thank you very much.
fees
Appreciate
are
it.
waived.
Thank you, ma'am.
Barb, best number to reach you at is 544-7198. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Our next item on the new business is Mr. Sam Craighead is with the National Churchill Museum. Some exciting things are going to happen here in May, and he's here to tell us about it. Thank you for being here.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, on May 3rd through 5th this year, we're going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the dedication of the National Churchill Museum. That dedication took place on May 7th, 1969. At that time, Lord Louis Mountbatten represented Queen Elizabeth and gave the dedication speech. One of Churchill's daughters, Mary Soames, was here with her son. 50 years have now passed, and Mary Soames' son is coming back. He is now Sir Nicholas Soames, and the granddaughter of Winston Churchill is coming back. Her name is Edwina Sands, and you're probably familiar with her because her sculpture, titled Breakthrough, includes the largest section of the Berlin Wall outside of Europe and stands near the museum. So among the people who will be here, Andrew Roberts, whose new book is on the New York Times bestseller list, titled Churchill, Walking with Destiny. As I said, Edwina Sands, granddaughter of Winston Churchill, Sir Nicholas Soames, grandson of Winston Churchill, and Randolph Churchill, who is Winston Churchill's great-grandson. On Saturday afternoon, we're going to have a parade. We had one in 1969, and we're going to have another one. And many of the same units, although not the same people, have been asked to return. We're going to have the Fulton High School Band, the Missouri Military Academy Band. Now, the Missouri Military Academy Band was the only band that played for Churchill in 1946. So they're going to be here. And a new band, the Missouri National Guard Band, is going to be here. The Adjutant General of the Missouri National Guard has promised us once again the MPs will be here to be the color guard and to be around town to add military color. He has also provided the National Guard Band, and he is also providing vehicles from the National Guard. We're going to have, once again, the pipers from St. Andrew's Society in Kansas City, the pipes and drums. And there will be military vehicles besides the National Guard. There's a group of World War II reenactors who are going to bring their vehicles. And there's also going to be Sherman tank, but the guns aren't loaded. Now, we're also going to have a viewing at the airport of a B-25 and a TBF. A TBF was a Navy torpedo bomber fighter, which was the type of aircraft that former President George H.W. Bush flew when he was in the Navy in World War II. They will be out at the airport for viewing on Saturday morning. They will also be offering rides, and then they're going to do a fly. In 1969, we had a Spitfire and a Messerschmitt doing a dogfight. But 50 years on, it's almost impossible to find those planes outside of Europe. The route of the parade that I have requested is to turn left onto Westminster Avenue from West 7th, turn left on 5th Avenue heading east, or 5th Street heading east, then north on Court Street, heading up to 7th, and then back with 7th to Westminster, where the parade will end. And I've asked the mayor to declare something special for this day. It would be a proclamation naming May 4th, 2019 as First Lieutenant John Frederick Lutz Day. John Frederick Lutz was a Fulton boy. He graduated from high school here in the class of 1936. He was president of his class. He attended Westminster College for 1 year, went to California. During that year in California, he got his pilot's license. He then surreptitiously, going through Canada, joined the Royal Air Force in England. There were a number of Americans who did this, and they were eventually put into squadrons called the American Eagle Squadron of the Royal Air Force. Now, these guys not only risked their lives, But since America was a neutral country at that point, they also risked their citizenship. They could have lost their citizenship. But they went over there and they fought the war with the British. In 1942, they were transferred to the U.S. Army Air Force. And for the first year, they flew their British Spitfires until they were changed with P-47s. On May 4th, 1943, First Lieutenant John Frederick Lutz was heading back from a raid of bombers over the occupied country of Belgium, and he was shot down. His plane went into the English Channel, and his plane and body were never recovered. So I've asked that that be done. If you go by 5th Street, 219 5th Street today, that's on the north side of the street, and it's a brick and wood structure. That was his home, and it's still standing. And we are going to have a representative from the Royal Air Force here. We're also going to have a representative from the current fighter squadron of the U.S. Air Force that the Eagles went into when they were transferred. In 1992, the surviving members of the Eagle squadrons met at the museum, and they had a service in the church and a program. And they named the church the official chapel of the Eagle squadrons. So we have a lot of good designation here. Fulton is well known all over the world, and for things that a lot of people don't realize. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Craighead.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Craighead?
Have a good evening.
Nice job,
Thank
sir.
you for your
Thank you.
time.
Look forward to May. Some months ago,
Did we have a motion?
I make a motion
Second? Okay.
to accept the request as stated.
Second.
okay, very good. Have a motion and second to accept the request from the Churchill Museum. Any further discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Yeses have it. Thank you. Okay. We'll now move on to item C, discussion of tiny houses. Some months ago, this item was brought to council by several members at that time. My impression was that council wanted to investigate that, so I referred it to the Planning and Zoning Commission, who has discussed this, and they've brought forth a proposal for you, and we'll let Mr. Dennis Houchins introduce it to you. Thank you.
All right, so the copy you guys have gotten is the one that I drafted, the new one. I had taken a look at the old draft and went through the minutes of the P&Z meeting and the council meeting and kind of looked at the issues they were having with the original draft. So in the draft you guys have, everything highlighted or in yellow is what I've changed from the previous draft, which I increased the minimum square footage on a standard lot and changed habitable space to living space. And then I decreased the square footage on substandard lots and changed the percentage. One of the issues was the old one didn't cover, it just gave a habitable space, where this one here, the structure has to cover that amount of space. So if it's 400 square feet, the footprint has to be 400 square feet of living space.
Habitable space does not include hallways, closets.
Bathrooms.
Much harder to measure and determine.
So, and living space, by the definition, is basically any part of the house except the garage.
I didn't see it. Are we up for discussion?
Sure.
I didn't necessarily see in the minutes from the planning and zoning, Dennis, and I don't know if this is something you can talk to, or if Bruce needs to talk to it, about that term of cover. You and I had a conversation about this. In terms of the footprint and the cover of why it was necessary to have a footprint that was 400 square feet of minimum, or a footprint of 900 square feet, rather than living space of that amount.
Are you talking about the previous minutes from the first P&Z meeting?
The January 2nd, 2019, we have a draft of those minutes, and I didn't necessarily see it. The minutes didn't capture any discussion of P&Z.
I looked at the previous P&Z minutes, I think was in 17,
okay.
I believe, is what I looked at. And one of the issues was the original one said 400 square feet of habitable space.
Right.
Or I believe it's 500 square feet. Well, the concern was they could build a 200 and stack 200 was one of the concerns. Correct. And get 3 stories and get the 500 square feet.
Correct.
And so with the new one, I basically kind of addressed that issue. It has to cover. So the footprint would have to cover.
Okay, I see.
Okay. So in the proposed ordinance that's in our packet, that has not necessarily gone to the P&Z Commission for review or approval?
Yes, it did.
It did.
And that's the minutes you have.
That's the
there.
January 2nd?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay. Was there any significant discussion at that time about the footprint requirement?
I don't think there was at this meeting.
Okay.
So the minutes what I was going from was the original draft and the.
But when you brought the proposed draft, P&Z.
No, there wasn't really much of a concern.
On that January 2nd meeting, there wasn't a discussion about that footprint.
The discussion was brought up, and I explained the same thing.
Okay.
It would cover that. Instead of being, you couldn't do a 200 square foot and then second story be 200 square foot to get 400. It has to be the footprint.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm personally not in favor of that phrasing in the ordinance. And so I'm interested in the Planning and Zoning Commission's thoughts or discussion on that.
Jeff, you have the October 1st in your, if you have a paper packet.
That's it.
It's in there.
I still have a problem with the 400 square feet. That's just not much of a living space. That's a 20-foot square.
Yeah.
That's a pretty small place to try to raise a family in.
But that's not our job to regulate how people wish to live and raise their family.
It could be.
Well,
I just think it's.
Any other discussion?
Myself.
this seems to bother you an awful lot, Richard. Is there a reason? I mean, I'm just asking what your opinion is on why this bothers you so much. I mean, that's just my question.
I just personally think it's too small. You know, I don't know that any of the, I mean, I drive around town, I don't see too many 20-foot square houses around. And we're putting them in, I mean, you do have it separated out into the lot size, which I appreciate that. We talked about that quite a bit. And that's just my feeling. I personally think it's too small.
Is the percentage the same for both?
As far as?
The 900 square feet for a 7,000 square foot lot and the 400?
Yeah, it just comes down. So if you have a 3,780 square foot lot, it would be 12% is what you would be requiring. But then it's capped at 400 square feet.
How does that affect setbacks on some of the smaller lots? Maybe some of the smaller lots aren't.
Well, that's what we were looking at. Some of the smaller lots you might not be able to get but a 500 or 600 square foot house to meet the setbacks. But we have exceptions for the front setback on lots of record, but the sides we don't. And you know, some of the substandard lots in town are 45 foot wide.
If a property owner wanted to build a house that was bigger and wanted to encroach on the
the side yards, they could make an application to the Board of Adjustments, and they would be able to make a ruling based on the comments received from the neighborhood and the neighbors as to whether that could or should be approved. That does, to get that type of variance, so it does not come back to the City Council.
Okay. So it's up to the
Board of Adjustments.
okay. Thank you.
But that's for a house larger than what we're setting our minimums at.
6.
Correct?
I personally think it ought to be upper range.
That's the other end of the conversation. That's if I want to build a house bigger and I'm encroaching closer to those property lines.
Well, no, not, if you want to build a house that's offset from the center of the property, I would assume.
No, like a side.
You know, like you want to put a 2-car garage or a 2-car driveway on the right side of your house, but you got to build your house on their property line or something.
Okay, but I guess I'm thinking the discussion tonight is how small of a property, how small of a how small of a house
Right.
can we build, not how big.
The minimum size.
Right.
Yes. And then where it goes on that piece of property is up to the Board of Adjustments.
Right, falls under a different ordinance.
Yeah. I've seen discussions on the internet about houses that have a permanent foundation, and then people talk about houses that are essentially trailers that are on wheels. I assume we're not talking about a trailer.
No. We have an ordinance for something similar to that.
Okay.
This would be a permanent residence.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Councilman.
Thank you. Did it consider that we're creating this ordinance? Personally, I don't think we're going to have an overrun on it, but if we do, I don't think so. But since we're creating it, can we just say this is our basic footing? I mean, we don't have to worry about little lots in my ward because either it becomes a green spot in the city and her and ends up mowing it anyhow. But why can't we go 700? So that's the basic.
On the minimum?
Yeah.
I just looked at the previous one, and the previous one was 500. And that takes you, and this one's 400 of living space, which is actually a bigger area than the 500 of habitable space. To get 500 habitable space is going to be probably 700. You know, by the time you get your hallways and bathrooms and all that stuff.
I mean, because that would still be a very small house, though.
What's that?
Mike, still, 700 would still be an awful small house.
To put it into perspective, the houses in Willow Creek, the new subdivision, are 1,200 square foot of living space. I took a look at the plans today, and it's about 900 square foot of habitable space. By the time you take out all the stuff that doesn't count.
But we have people that wish to build a house smaller than that.
Yeah.
But I think
it comes down to what limits are we wanting to place on people's property rights and thoughts and desires to build a house that meets their needs. Whether it'll meet our needs, whether it meets my wants and needs. You know, I personally couldn't live with my wife in a 400 square foot house for very long. She couldn't live with me. But that's not. But if that was our thoughts and desires, then that's what they ought to be able to do.
On another note, on the 400 square foot home, they have a yard to take care of. They have other things that they need at their house. And do we end up with places, i.e. 6th Street, in their yard because they can't get it in a garage, and then it becomes an issue for us as well as a city from a nuisance perspective?
Well, we have an excellent example in this town, which is what brought this discussion to the city council. And there is no nuisance concerns with that piece of property.
As of today, you are correct.
As of today, there's none.
You are correct.
We
would
do have ordinances that say there is, but apparently we can't enforce them.
What does that mean?
Okay.
What does that mean?
I'm
Talking
not
about
sure.
6th Street.
We got ordinances against the cars parked there and
6th Street.
in the
Thank you.
yards and this, but apparently we cannot enforce the ordinances that we got on the books. Or we won't. I'm not sure which. And that's not the only place in Fulton that's happening either.
Okay, so is there any other comments or questions on the tiny house discussion?
My comment is I would prefer for us to receive a draft of this ordinance that did not include the phrasing of cover, did not speak to the footprint, can speak to the size of the house, it can speak to the 400 square foot living minimum for 12% of a substandard, and it can speak to the 900 square foot for a standard lot, but not use the phrasing of cover or footprint. If they wish to build a 2-story that still meets those minimums, then allow that.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion, if that's
Thank you.
the appropriateness.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it for discussion for one question part of it. Mr. Stone, when you said they can build the second, how many floors are you going to build?
Well, I understand we have an ordinance that says you can't build a home more than 35 foot tall.
Yes.
Probably goes back to how big our fire truck ladder is, but
Yeah, but that's what
so that would limit the number of stories that they could build.
Yeah, but it's,
Well, the whole thing, I mean, this whole thing come up about the tiny house that's down here. And it doesn't match, or it doesn't match the neighborhood. So the integrity of that neighborhood was completely not considered when we let that house build there. I think that is one of the main things that we should do, is protect the neighborhoods that houses can be built in. Is, you know, if they're small houses and they can build them in there, fine. If they're not, they shouldn't be able to be put there.
And we have other neighborhoods where the homes that were built don't fit that neighborhood either. They completely stand out from that neighborhood because they might be a 1980s house that was built in a 1950s neighborhood, and it doesn't completely match. You know, we have that now. We have.
But then, go ahead, Steve.
You know, it's not necessarily the size; it's just the design.
Well, let's go for an example. I have to agree with Councilman Bond on this one. And I'm going to use this example. Everyone knows where this property is, on Court Street, the old mid-cap house. So if we go by this way, I could buy that lot, since it goes all the way through. I could put 4 little tiny houses on that lot. Do you think everybody on Court Street is going to be happy with 4 little tiny houses on that lot? Probably not. But, I mean, we have to agree with Richard. Where do we want these little tiny houses? Got to be something. You know, it sounds like we are trying to use the small lots in town for a tiny house, and I think that's a bad direction to go.
I would agree with that.
Jeff,
Yes.
I guess why? Why are you concerned about the phrasing cover? Why are you?
Because it does push the size of the house. Right now the ordinance reads 500 square foot of habitable space, correct?
4.
No, the
old one, 500.
current past ordinance.
Right.
That doesn't say you have to have a 25 by 20 square foot house. You can have a 25 by 10 that's 2 stories. But if we change that wording to 500 square foot of cover, that it must cover that, then we are mandating that has to be a 25 5 by 20. Or whatever math equals
Yeah,
that
I would
same
be okay
thing.
with that.
You're making a requirement that the house has to be so big. And any of those, and again, I look to someone who's wanting to build this type of house has a budget in mind. They have a lifestyle in mind. And if we're saying, nope, you've got to pour that much more concrete. You've got to pour that much more of this much more footing. You've got to run this much more electric. We're adding to the cost of the home they wish to build. That's where my foundation comes from.
Okay. So why is this ordinance in effect? Why do we have a small house ordinance?
We do not.
We do not.
We do not.
Right.
We
Why are we trying to get a small house ordinance?
Because there are some that are not pleased with the small house that was built at Business 54 and Glenstone and Coates End.
But why? What's the concern?
Personal preference is all I've really been able to.
I don't think
No,
so.
I think it's financial. I think the minute a lower price, I got a $200,000 home, guy moves in with a little house and puts it there. What's that going to do to mine? I think that's the concern that some people have.
I think it definitely, Mary, I think it definitely affects the property value as soon as it's sold, because now it becomes a comp for an appraiser.
Other houses in the area, yeah. So I think that's the big concern.
Just buy the tiny house and it's the mother-in-law house.
Well, a bunch of them have
There
been
you
tunnels
go. That's a
between
good
them.
idea for a mother-in-law.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor.
And that is to remove the verbiage
you want to
of,
read it one more
yeah,
time,
we're going to
please?
remove the verbiage of cover and footprint, but still allow for multiple stories, and leaving the percentage in the 900 square foot on a standard lot.
Okay. So if there's not any further discussion, I'll call for the question on that motion, whether or not to approve it or
Did they
not.
have a second?
Did we have a second?
We did.
Steve seconded,
Councilman Moore.
so we could have
Steve
a
did.
discussion.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Okay.
And to be clear, what you're voting on is should we bring an ordinance back to you with that verbiage. You're not voting on it tonight that it's going to go through. It's just the ordinance.
To bring the ordinance, okay.
Okay, everyone clear? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no.
No.
Okay, could I have a show of hands of the no? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It goes down. Thank you. Now let me ask, is there any reason for the city to put any more time into this issue? Is there enough account? How many, I'd like a show of hands of how many council would like to continue the discussion on tiny houses.
Well, that depends if you answer a question for me really quick. Does that leave anybody can just buy a lot and put a tiny house wherever they want now? That's how we set it.
Right now, the only thing they would have to follow is our building code that we've adopted.
Yeah.
And it states minimum square footages.
But our current ordinance says there's only one building per lot. So you could not do what you said a while ago unless you
And the current square footage is what?
On a lot or a house?
On a lot.
On a lot, our standard lot is 7,000.
Okay, and then the house that goes on that?
That we don't have, unless there's a homeowners association or something that requires that in the subdivision. We don't have a minimum right now.
So I think in order to protect property values of individuals that we do need to do something more, Mr. Mayor.
Me too.
Could I have a show of hands of who wants to proceed forward with it?
I think we ought to.
Okay, thank you. We will go ahead and continue to do that. So try to make some changes and bring her back then. Okay?
Thank you, Dennis.
Okay. Now our next item, new business, is International Association of Firefighters 2945. Would you like to come forward?
Here's our guys.
Give us your thoughts.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, good evening. And I'm joined tonight by President Joey Murth, Vice President Justin Malone, and myself, Scott Peterson, Secretary Treasurer of Local 2945. We are here tonight on behalf of the Fulton Professional Firefighters and the cities we protect. As you know, a legal matter that the firefighters were forced to file against the city has been pending since October 20th, 2017. Among our claims are that the city administration failed to bargain in good faith as it is required to do in the Missouri State Constitution. Fulton firefighters have long believed that we have a strong case, which discovery demonstrated. For example, in October 2017, the City Council rejected our agreement, even though it had been agreed to by the negotiating team. As some of you will recall, the HR director recommended the City Council reject the agreement because the agreement contained language relating to the termination of firefighters without just cause. What the HR director, however, was that this language had actually been proposed by the city's own negotiation team. In other words, the HR director asked the City Council to reject the agreement because it contained a provision that its own team proposed. We do not believe that this satisfied the city's constitutional obligation to bargain in good faith. That said, we were happy to engage in mediation last October. We believe mediation will be beneficial as both sides should want to obtain a peaceful resolution, avoid further expensive litigation, and to show a commitment to working together for the citizens of Fulton. Jointly, we identified and retained 2 excellent mediators from the University of Missouri School of Law in Columbia. Knowing that the mediated settlement would save both sides significant legal fees to litigate the case through summary judgment or trial. That mediation was a success, resulting in settlement that both the city administration and the Fulton professional firefighters agreed on, and both parties notified the court. The firefighters look forward to labor peace. Having the stability of a negotiated agreement will encourage our firefighters to remain with the city for longer. As you know, employee turnover has been an issue in the fire department in the past several years. The stability of labor peace encourages them to put down deeper roots here in Fulton rather than leave for the fire departments elsewhere in Missouri. It enables them to get to know and serve the community better. The community and taxpayers of Fulton benefit from the same stability. The city administration, however, is about to effectively renege on its agreement at mediation based on a single term of the agreement. We understand that the council will now determine whether it wants to accept the tentative settlement agreement. Tonight, we urge the city council to abide by the negotiated agreement and resolve this long-running dispute. This matter has been pending since 2017, and we have been negotiating since early 2015. We respectfully request that you reject the proposal of hiring new, likely expensive attorneys in St. Louis to continue litigating and instead vote to honor an agreement with the community's firefighters. Continuing to litigate will undoubtedly cost Fulton taxpayers more than honoring the agreement with the Fulton firefighters. It will divert taxpayer resources away from Fulton and continue litigation that may ultimately force the city to continue negotiations anyway and under less favorable terms for the city. To abide by the negotiated agreement is both the fiscally prudent decision and the right thing to do. Should the city administration decide that it wants to engage in further discussions instead of accepting the agreement, even though we believe the settlement language is clear, we are willing to do so, but the time is limited. The negotiated agreement has been awaiting ratification for months now. The deadline for February 1st, 2019 to finalize the agreement. We have communicated through our attorneys to the cities about what the comparative costs are, and we hope that the council will consider that in closed session. On behalf of the Fulton firefighters, we look forward to a successful resolution and to honoring the negotiated agreement. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Peterson?
I think a lot of what this comes down to, and it's conversations that I've had with other people as well within the council, is the union agreement items. There are items in there that would be different than what's in the employee handbook for all of the other city employees. And so I guess the basic question is why are some of those items necessary for
we
the
agreed upon
department versus all the other departments within the city?
Back in October, when we sat through mediation, we came to terms and we came to an agreement. And those terms were agreed upon when we walked out of that building with the negotiating team.
And then those recommendations.
That was brought to you.
Then those recommendations were brought to the city council. The city council had our own conversations. And I can tell you that seems to be the question that keeps coming up. Is why do we want to agree to something that would be different from all the other city employees? And this isn't argumentative. It's a question that really gets to the basics of why this has not been settled before now, is because we would be setting the firefighters aside as employees from the rest of city employees.
And I think that's been discussed in the mediation, so I would either turn that over to our attorneys or turn that question over to Mr. Johnson, since he sat through the mediation.
But I'm asking you.
I can come up and answer that question.
Okay.
We have a constitutional right to bargain. My name's Joey Mirth. I'm the president of the Fulton Firefighters. We have a constitutional right to bargain our working rights. That is a right that we are afforded by the state constitution. That is why we are doing this. That is why we negotiate. And sometimes that does happen. And unfortunately, the fact of the matter is we're not comparing apples to apples here, guys. We really aren't. We are different. We do work 400 more hours a year than the typical city employee. That is why we want certain things in this contract. And we have the right to do so and step up and do that, and that's why we're doing it.
Okay. Can you speak to a specific example?
I cannot.
And I guess that's what
I think the specific examples fall into a confidentiality that agreement that I can't speak on.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm sorry for that, but that's where we're at. You guys know the details of that agreement.
Right. And we're trying to understand what's behind some of those.
Sure. And all I can tell you is that we have a constitutional right to bargain. That's why we bargain. That's why we bargain for working rights, and sometimes they do end up being different than other employees, and that's no different than unions across the United States. That's how it works.
But it's not necessarily required that occur. So I guess that's what I'm.
Right.
Jeff, if I might be able to help just a little bit here.
Sure.
I asked Bill today for the city handbook, and he sent that to me, and I think there's some clear examples in here of exactly what we were talking about, and we could talk about those later.
In the executive session tonight.
Right. I was just interested in their point of view on those differences.
Well,
but I'm
this will give.
that it's not something we
I
can
think this will give their point of view.
I wish I could speak more on that, but unfortunately, because we are in litigation, a lot of the talking has to be through attorneys. So, you know, I am limited to what I can discuss and what I can say, and that's kind of where I'm at on that. I'm not dodging your question. I can just answer your question in a general fashion and leave it at that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you for what you guys do.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Now move on with the agenda. That time where council has a chance to bring forward any item that's not on the agenda that they would like to bring forward for consideration for future action or whatnot. So at this time, let me start down here with Mr. Shivadecker.
I'm good.
Mr. Moore.
I'm gonna let you have a break.
Richard. Mr. Vaughn.
I don't really have anything other, just a question. How's the Park and Recs thing coming with the architects?
It's proceeding. It's moving on.
I think they have to check with Clay.
And they're still on schedule for March.
Are they? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brown?
I just would like to thank the city employees that plowed the streets. As much as I did not like to have to shovel the end of my driveway through several times,
we all do.
they took care of the streets very well, and I do appreciate that. So thank you very much to
Very
everybody
good.
that took care of it.
You bet.
Thank you. Lots of kudos there.
You bet.
Mr. Stone?
Just repeating the kudos from Mr. Brown.
Ms. Mary?
Yes, I have a question. I was going through the paperwork for the meeting tonight. On our food recalls, what happens? Are those published? Dennis, I think you handle this. There were 13 recalls. There was 13 food recalls in December. Yeah, recalls on food, things like that. How's that handled? Is that the public know? How are we handling this?
That would be a Casey question, the health inspector. She takes care of the food recalls.
Okay,
I don't know if she puts them online.
I was going to say,
She individually contacts each of the stores and food providers in town and sends them a list of any things that have been recalled.
Okay.
And then they have to confirm back with her those items.
That product.
So there are checks and balances there, and then anything where it would go to the public level is generally done higher up, where you would see that on your news stations or at the county level.
I just kind of wondered. I was going through things and thought, no, that's kind of.
I know she gets the through the state, I think, is the recalls.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
But exactly how she goes about checking the stores and stuff, I'm not.
And then that's the information.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. I had one other thing. Just brought to my attention the new sub shop here in town. What's that street? The sub shop's on
Ravine.
Of course, Ravine. The parking for that, it's really a hard place. A lot of people in now. Across the street from the sub shop, there's no parking all along the Ravine on that right side. Is that something that could be considered a few more spots? Maybe take this to the traffic commission to see if some of those, that one side of the street, possibly part of that could be no parking taken away from, where they could park there for.
On Ravine or on First Street?
Well, coming through, what is it, right on the front of it? It's First Street?
Ravine.
It is Ravine. You're right. It's Ravine.
Ravine's north and south.
Right. As you come up. I just wondered if the traffic commission
I see Kyle writing over there, so I'm sure the traffic commission will look at it.
Take a look at it.
We'll go back and look at road widths and see what another parking spot on the other side would do, and see what it would do for traffic patterns.
Okay. All right.
And if he deems it's appropriate and doable, he'll take it to the traffic commission.
Okay. All right.
It would be great. I could pull my trailer vehicle up there and get a sandwich then.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons?
I don't have anything.
And Mr. Shine.
Yeah, this is recurring. I'd still like to see us put a cloak closet right there in that corner right there. You notice that Steve and I have got ours out here. There's a reason we don't put our coat back there in that closet. And we'd like to have it stuck out here.
Very good.
Feel togetherness.
Mr. Mayor, can we do that in honor of Mr. Shiland?
Yeah, I think so.
The Shiland Memorial Coat Rack or something?
Yeah. He's still with us.
The
It's
Shiland
honorary.
Honor, yeah.
Okay, very good. We'll now move on to resolutions.
Oh, what we got?
Our first resolution this evening is Resolution 3327, which has to do with a potential contract with Ivan L. Schrader of St. Louis, I think. Councilman Shivdecker, would you please present 3327?
Resolution number 3327, a resolution authorizing the mayor on behalf of the city of Fulton, Missouri, to sign all necessary documents with Ivan L. Schrader of Schrader Law Firm relating to labor relations services. I make a motion we adopt resolution 3327 at tonight's meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
Sir.
I'd like to make a motion to table this.
Second.
Yeah.
Okay. Motion to table has precedence. Although, did we have a second on that first?
We did not have a second on the first motion.
Okay. Let's see if we can get a second first, and then we'll take your motion. Did I have a second on resolution 3327 motion to consider it tonight? I have a second down here on Mr. Moore. Okay, thank you. Now, we do have first and second. We'll consider the table. we have a motion and a second to table it, resolution 3327. It's open. That motion is open for discussion.
Are we planning on having an executive session?
We are.
Yes.
Okay.
I say at this time we table it. I agree to table.
Just a kind of a heads up, we do not have legal representation at this time.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is tabled, or the resolution is tabled, excuse me. Okay, so now move on to resolution number 3328, which is a resolution that approves a contract with the developer of Willow Creek subdivision for road. Councilman Braun, would you please present resolution 3328?
A resolution authorizing the mayor on behalf of the city of Fulton, Missouri, to sign all necessary documents in relation to an agreement with Joe Ellsworth, owner and developer of the Willow Creek subdivision, pertaining to subdivision road usage width and establishing an effective date. I make a motion to adopt resolution 3328 at this meeting.
Second.
Very good. I have a motion and second to adopt 3328. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
My only discussion would be on the whole thing was, right today we're saying $25,000 additional to help with the street widthening. If we don't know when that's going to be, how can we really come up with a dollar amount? Because costs are...
It's not to exceed.
Continuously. Okay, so it's not to exceed 25,000.
Right, Kyle? Not to exceed.
Yeah, that's the.
Okay.
I guess I understand, you know, the Commons Drive is a certain width now, but this is going to be going into the subdivision. There was discussion about, you know, the potential of where this may connect to later on down the road, so to speak, no pun intended. But I'm not sure, based on the drawings that we had of the subdivision, I'm not sure if agreeing to widen that road through the subdivision is the right thing to do, because then we would definitely be creating a thoroughfare through this neighborhood. You know, if we're saying we're going to widen this road, then it's like we're already saying we expect people to run through this neighborhood.
But wasn't it?
Am I in?
Well, wasn't it? What my thought is? But wasn't it? The idea wasn't it to
accommodate some of that?
To accommodate the traffic into the new park area.
But is that really where we want that traffic to go through? Do we want them to come from there through that neighborhood to the housing area?
It would be an alternate exit from the park.
Well, the original plan, from what I saw, was through Tennyson Road.
Right. I guess that's
the thing is, anybody coming into town is pretty much going to go to Commons if they know how to get there. So that's going to end up to be a primary access, whether the homeowners like it or not.
Right.
But it is Plot 2. It's not, I don't know when it's planned to be built.
Down the road.
Much later.
But I think widening it does allow for that extra traffic by all means.
And I know it's a chicken and an egg. If we don't make it wider, then we're creating a traffic problem when people do use it as an access. But if we do widen it, then we're saying, please come through this neighborhood all you want to. That's the balance.
Are we overthinking our thing? Let's hear from
Kyle, would you like to address this, please?
Yeah.
Speaking with the, speaking with the owner / developer, he's working on phase 2 of that subdivision right now, which I'm told will incorporate this road, and he is very agreeable to build the extra width, understands the reasonings why. Before phase 1 was built, we were talking with the developer and Parks and Rec and the developer's engineer about the potential of a future park for the city of Fulton and potential traffic that could come through there. So he understands that it could be added traffic, and because he understands that and because it's extra, he's asking for us to pay for that extra 6 foot.
Yes.
The other positive thing that I think it does do is takes traffic potentially in front of businesses that are there that could.
Yeah, I don't think any of the businesses in that street would
no
not
objection.
want this to happen.
Yeah, probably not.
I was just thinking of within the neighborhood.
In fact, when we first started talking about the sports complex, that was the whole idea, is to force the traffic through the commons area to increase business.
And I've been to many ball fields all over this state and all over the United States, and many of them go through subdivisions.
Yeah, our neighborhoods. Sure.
It's a park-like setting. So.
Thank you, that helps me.
Any further discussion? If not, call for the question. All those in favor of approving resolution 3328, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Yeses have it. Thank you. Resolution 3328 is adopted. We'll now move on to second reading ordinances. Bill number 1525 is an ordinance that declares certain property surplus to the city. Councilman Vaughn, would you please present for second reading Bill number 1525, title only.
Bill number 1525, an ordinance declaring city property to be surplus property and authorizing its sale and establish an effective date. I make a motion to place Bill 1525 for third reading at the next scheduled meeting.
Second.
Very good. Third reading at the next meeting. Any further discussion of this? Do I have a second?
Yes.
Yes.
Here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there any further discussion of this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Very good. Yeses have it. Bill number 1525 advances. Bill number 1526 is an ordinance that rezones an area at East 8th and State Street. Councilman Moore, would you please present 1526, title only?
There's no objections. I will read this for second and third reading at tonight's meeting by title only.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Bill number 1526, an ordinance reclassifying under the zoning ordinance a tract of land located at East 8th Street and State Street, Old Shoe Factory site in Fulton, Missouri, establishing an effective date. Move this for third reading by title only at tonight's meeting.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to advance 1526 to third reading tonight. Is there any further discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Bill number 1526 advances. Okay. We'll now present Bill number 1526 for third reading. Councilman Moore, would you please present it by title only?
Bill number 1526, an ordinance reclassifying under the zoning ordinance a tract of land located at East 8th Street and State Street, Old Shoe Factory site, Fulton, Missouri, establishing an effective date. I move this for final passage at tonight's meeting by title only.
Second.
Very good. Thank you. I have a motion and a second to advance Bill 1526 for final consideration. Any further discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Yeses have it. 1526 advances for final consideration. You've heard Bill 1526 presented 3 times, and it's now time for your final vote. Please signify yes as the clerk reads the roll.
Mr. Shiland?
Or no.
I knew what you meant. Mr. Schuyler.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Reclue?
Yes.
Mr. Shiverdecker?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
And Mr. Braun.
Yes.
8 council members affirmative.
Very good, thank you. Bill number 1526 is adopted. We'll now consider for second reading Bill number 1527, which is an ordinance that reclassifies zoning at West 13th Street and Westminster Avenue. Councilman Simmons, would you please present 1527, third reading?
Yes, sir.
Second reading, Steve.
Bill number 1527, an ordinance reclassifying under the zoning ordinance a tract of land located at West 13th Street and Westminster Avenue in Fulton, Missouri, and establishing an effective date. I recommend approval of this bill at tonight's meeting to advance it to third reading and final tonight.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to advance Bill number 1527. Is there any further discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Thank you. Bill number 1527 advances to third reading. Councilman Simmons, if you'd please present 1527, title only, third reading.
Bill number 1527, an ordinance reclassifying under the zoning ordinance a tract of land located at West 13th Street and Westminster Avenue in Fulton, Missouri, and establishing an effective date. I recommend approval of the third reading of this bill and advance it to final reading tonight.
Second.
Second.
Very good. I have a motion and a second to advance 1527. Is there any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Very good. You've heard Bill number 1527 advances for final consideration. You've heard it read 3 times. It's now time for final vote. Please signify your vote by yes or no as the clerk reads the roll.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Reclue?
Yes.
Mr. Shiverdecker?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
And Mr. Braun?
Yes.
Mr. Schuyler?
Yes.
8 council members affirmative.
Very good. We'll now consider Bill number 1528, which is a rezoning of an area on North Hospital Drive. Councilwoman Reclue, would you please present Bill number 1528, title only,
Yes.
second reading?
Yes, I'd like to also do reading 3.
Sure.
Okay. Bill number 1528, an ordinance reclassifying under the zoning ordinance a tract of land located at Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and North Hospital Drive in Fulton, Missouri, and establishing an effective date. I'd like to advance Bill number 1528 at tonight's meeting for third reading.
Second.
Very good. I have a motion and a second to advance Bill number 1528. Is there any discussion of this motion or question? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Thank you. Bill number 1528 is now scheduled for third reading. Councilwoman Reclue, would you please present 1528, title only?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Bill number 1528, an ordinance reclassifying under the zoning ordinance a tract of land located at Martin Luther King Drive, Junior King Drive and North Hospital Drive in Fulton, Missouri, and established an effective date. I make a motion that Bill number 1528 be voted on tonight, third reading for passage tonight's meeting.
Second.
Oh, I screwed down on that.
Thank you. We have a motion to advance Bill number 1528 to final consideration. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Very good. You've heard Bill number 1528 presented 3 times. It's now time for final vote. Please signify your vote by yes or no upon roll call.
Ms. Reclue?
Yes.
Mr. Shiverdecker?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Braun?
Yes.
Mr. Schuyland?
Yes.
And Mr. Moore?
Yes.
8 council members affirmative.
Very good. Thank you. So Bill number 1528 is adopted. And we'll now move on to bill number 1529, which is a ordinance that authorizes a golf cart easement with a developer out in Tanglewood. Councilman Stone, would you please present 1529, title only, second reading?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Bill number 1529, an ordinance authorizing the mayor on behalf of the city of Fulton, Missouri to sign all necessary documents in relation to the ingress and egress agreement between the city and G. Lewis LLC, authorizing a golf cart easement for residential development and establishing an effective date. I move to move bill number 1529 to third reading at tonight's meeting.
Second.
Very good. Thank you. Have a motion and a second to advance bill number 1529, third reading. Is there any further discussion of the motion?
Yes, I do have one question that came to me as I was reading through today.
A vision.
And that is the path. Where's it going to go through at? We have a ambulance district that's putting a new building or updating a building right in there. How's it going to affect them and their property? Is it completely separate? Because I know the piece of property next to it is also for sale.
It will run on the back side of the ambulance property on the city-owned Tanglewood property.
It's all on our property. Be on the western edge of that piece.
On the far, it'll be if you're in the down there at the maintenance building at the golf course, it'll be on the far side of the pond, on our property.
Between the pond and the new ambulance. But how's it going to get back
across the street to the center part of the street? You have the apartment or the townhouses that are there now.
Okay.
And then across the street is where the development is going.
And next to the new ambulance at the barn.
As you're looking at the ambulance to the left, all the way to the end, the last two or three lots.
Yes, to the north.
Yes. So that's where it's going to cut through on the north end.
On the north side of the ambulance.
Perfect.
And then between the ambulance building and the pond.
At the three lots that are up there on the end.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
We had this discussion last week.
Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Very good. Thank you. Bill number 1529 will now be presented for third reading, title only. Councilman Stone, please fire away.
Bill number 1529, an ordinance authorizing the mayor on behalf of the city of Fulton, Missouri, to sign all necessary documents in relation to the ingress and egress agreement between the city and G. Lewis LLC, authorizing a golf cart easement for residential development and establishing an effective date. I move to advance bill number 1529 for final reading at tonight's meeting.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to advance 1529 for final consideration. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Yeses have it. You've heard bill number 1529 presented 3 times, and it's now time for final consideration. For final vote, please signify your vote by yes or no as clerk reads the roll.
Mr. Shiverdecker?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Braun?
Yes.
Mr. Shyland?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
And Ms. Reclue?
Yes.
8 council members affirmative.
Very good, thank you. Bill number 1529 is adopted. Okay, thank you. Now I'll move on to announcements. The chamber banquet is this Thursday. Sounds like we're going to eat well. And the next council meeting will be February the 12th.
Yeah.
Are there any other announcements? Excuse me.
I would add that anyone who's wanting to go to MML Legislative Conference, which is February 12th and 13th, I do need to know tonight. So if you'll let me know, I would appreciate it.
Okay, very good. I do have a need for executive session. So if I could have a motion for executive session, then we'll come back.
Mr. Mayor, I believe.
I wanted to say something before we left there. I wanted to, for Human Rights, to thank you and Mr. Johnson, Courtney, and Lori for all they did for our program the other night. It was a very informative program, and we do have some pictures for you, so just wanted to thank the administration for that.
Motion to adjourn to executive session.
Second. Thank you. Third. Would you read the roll call?
And Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, can you state why we're going to executive session, please? I don't believe we said that before. We have to state why we're going to executive session.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Personnel issues.
Okay. All right, Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, we're taking a roll call.
We are.
Okay.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Braun?
Yes.
Mr. Shyland?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Reclue?
Yes.
And Mr. Shiverdecker?
Yes.
The council members are negative.
Good. Zing.